making sure children are healthy, safe, loved, ready to learn, succeeding in school and in life. This is Our Children, a program brought to you by the Children's Trust. Good morning. I'm Ileana Varela.
And I'm Walid Toedi, CEO and President of the Children's Trust.
And together we welcome you to Our Children. Well, summer has flown by and the start of public school is almost a week away. For many of you, this is a very busy time. And during the next half hour, our guests will offer valuable advice and information to help you get your child off to the best possible start.
And to talk to us about the academic year ahead, Superintendent of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, Alberto Carvalho. He has steered the school system through some very tough economic times, and his new contract ensures that he'll be with us to lead us through 2015. Superintendent, you've been trying very hard to cut costs without impacting the classroom. Will there be any noticeable changes that parents and children should anticipate this new school year?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to spend this half hour with you. I think programs like these that bring information to communities are critically important. Going right to the question, I think it's fair to say that yes, you cannot basically gut public education funding down to the level of what it was back in 2001 without expecting some impacts and some potential outcomes. But what I like to tell parents at this point is that we try to minimize the direct impacts in the classroom. So what you will see is less administration, you will see less support staff, but the environment in the classroom dealing specifically with teachers and the educational services that students get will not be affected. So unlike most systems, large urban systems across Florida and the country, our system prides itself in still maintaining world language programs, arts and music programs, and physical education in addition to the core content subject area matter. So that's something that the students will not see a difference in. The biggest impact is on adults, not on kids.
Now, we have had a new legislation passed affecting a number of students and core subjects, in fact, modifying what voters had approved. So we can expect more children in classrooms, right?
I think parents ought to expect in the classes that were declassified from under the umbrella of class size reduction to see some modest increases in the ratios.
And which classes more or less are we talking
Basically,
about?
every class outside of social studies, language arts, math, and science. Any one of those classes is under the umbrella of class size reduction, therefore it needs to oblige to the constitutional limits of 18, 22, and 25 pupils per student. Every other classroom, the non-core classes, the traditional elective classes, anything from TV production to some language courses will have a few additional students per teacher. It's sort of regrettable because I'm not exactly sure that this new legislation follows the intent of the law. It definitely does not follow the letter of the law. But again, in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, we try to minimize the impact and try to follow common sense as we load master schedules for students to make sure that we do not overburden any one single teacher.
There's been some reports in the media that much of the impact might be felt as it relates to maintenance and repairs of older schools. Tell me a little bit about that. How will that be handled? And will there be large cuts in terms of maintenance workers and staff that help maintain the look and the feel of schools?
The sad but true answer is unfortunately yes. And this is a function of two things. Number one, declining revenues coming from the state. Again, as I said earlier, the base student allocation, which is the barometer of overtime funding spent on kids in the state of Florida, has declined dramatically since 2001 to now. In fact, we're back to what it was in 2001. This is a function of both declining sales taxes, sales revenues, which come from the state, as well as the implosion of the housing market felt across Florida, particularly South Florida. Needless to say, over the past 3 years, we saw declines in property values at 30% 3 years ago, 14%, 6% this year. Most of the funds that come into our public school system come from local property taxes. Part of those funds go into the capital program, which provides for new school construction, which we're not doing a whole lot of, and also the maintenance of buildings. just to give you a frame of reference, from 5 years ago to now, our capital program has been gutted from about $2 billion a year to about $500 million a year. And most of those dollars are used to pay debt, going back to the bond referendum of the 1980s, leaving a very short percentage of funds to maintain the upkeep of our schools. So our response to that is that we reorganized our capital departments, our maintenance department. We shaved a lot of the overhead. We did away with a lot of middle management to ensure that the people who carry a tool belt are actually in schools, providing maintenance, essential maintenance, so that critical safety to life issues are addressed immediately, but also those efficiencies that make sense, that are environmentally conscientious and bring about a reduction in utility costs are maintained, such as replacement of air conditioning systems, windows, and roofing systems. Those will continue, but at a different pace than was the case a few years ago because of the decimation of that capital program.
Well, it's clear that we're very fortunate that despite these alarming cuts in budgets, student achievement is up in Miami-Dade. And to your credit, the school system's credit, to teachers' credit, a lot of people have worked very hard. But can we expect to keep that achievement up with continued cuts from the state year after year?
Well, that's the critical question. I'm a real believer that as far as economic trending is concerned, we really don't know what the tipping point was until we passed it. And we may, in fact, pass the funding level that we believe is adequate without recognizing that we passed a tipping point, inviting a whole host of consequences that are daunting towards the sustainability of student achievement in our school system.
A point of no return,
A point of no return. I'm one who believes that we've done not only more with less, but we've done better with less. I think a testament to that is that 85% of our schools maintain or increase their grade level performance compared to the previous year. We're up for the Nobel Prize of Education, the Broad Prize for Urban Education, which is the most sought after prize nationally as far as public education is concerned, on the basis of increased student achievement and narrowing the achievement gap between minority students and their counterparts. And even if you look at our administrative configuration over the past few years, we reorganized the system to build efficiencies and embed at the same time innovations that we now have the lowest per pupil administrative cost in the entire state of Florida. So there's a lot to be proud of, but all of that could be compromised if at some point we don't reverse the trend of education funding. We've made a sacrifice like everybody else in the state, but there's a point where we need to plateau and in fact build towards the future.
And we're getting close to that point, in your opinion?
I think we are either getting close to that point or we may have already passed that point, even though we don't know it. My recommendation to our Dade delegation, who continue to fight for our community, is develop the plan right now for economic growth. Don't wait until the economy begins to boom to then make determinations about where the funding would be invested. The plan is now in a certain percentage of economic growth in the state of Florida that should be dedicated to public education and workforce development.
Well, thank you, Superintendent, for the work that you're doing, especially at these hard times, and thank you for joining us this Saturday, and good luck to you in this next legislative session. Certainly going to need it.
Thank you.
Up next, important vaccines and health issues, as well as after-school programs. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Joining us now are Larry Pintacuda, Director of the Florida After School Network, which advocates for quality programs in our state, and Dr. Gloria Reithkoff from Miami Children's Hospital.
Doctor, we're going to start out with you. You run the hospital's mobile immunizations unit. So you know that technically a child can be turned away on the first day of school if they don't have their shots up to date. So what are the critical ages of certain vaccines?
Yet normally you are going to have the entry into 4 to 6 that most of the time is going to be now pre-K, and then again middle school. So those are the two main areas where the school will take the opportunity to actually put the children in the vaccinations that are required. For childhood vaccines, normally this will be the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine, the hepatitis vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella, the varicella vaccine.
So right off the bat, you're talking any child who's going to school for the first time will likely have to have these vaccines.
Correct. In general, we start vaccinating children under newborn periods, and when I say actually it should be infants, around 6 to 2 months of age. So normally most of the children will complete primary immunizations by the time they are 18 months to 2 years. And then again, they will get a secondary booster at age 4.
And then by the time you go into school, pre-K or kindergarten, you need to have all that proof of those vaccines.
Correct.
In order to be allowed at school.
This includes daycare and it includes schools. It is a blue form, a lot of parents call it that, but it's the Florida certification of vaccinations. Besides that, they also may need physical forms that they call it the yellow form. So they have to have those forms if they're entering school for the first time. If they're coming from another country or they're coming from another state, those forms are required.
Now, say you as a parent don't have a primary physician or a pediatrician that you normally go to. Where else can you go to have your children vaccinated?
Well, obviously the website of Children's Trust is excellent because it provides a list of information that will be actually based on where you live. You can also call the line, the 211 line, to get the information. So this will provide the parents with the information they need, and I certainly urge them not to wait to the last minute.
Not to wait. That's great. That's the best advice.
School starts on the 22nd of August, and you want to have those papers before that date.
Beforehand.
Larry, what is the Florida After School Network and why is it necessary?
Well, the Florida After School Network is one of 39 national networks funded by the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. We also get our funding from the Children's Services Councils, including the Children's Trust. The network has two purposes. The first is to improve the overall quality of after school in this state, and I think we've done a pretty good job with the network in that we've developed the first Florida standards for after school. Those standards have been endorsed by the Children's Services Councils, by the Early Learning Coalitions, by the United Ways of Florida, the Boys and Girls Clubs, and many other avenues have endorsed those standards and bought into them. The second thing we're working on, we're very excited about this, is the development of an after-school professional development system, whereby an after-school worker can get a certificate all the way up having a bachelor's degree. And when we accomplish this, and it should be done in 2012, we'll be the first state in the country to have this formalized system from certificate all the way up to a bachelor's level degree. The second thing that the network is involved with, and one we'll be focusing on, is to achieve funding, sustainable funding, so that every kid has an opportunity to participate in a quality after school. Not that every kid has to have one, has to participate, but they have the opportunity to participate.
The parents are very concerned about that time when school bell rings at 2 or 2:15 until they get home from work at 6 o'clock. What should parents look for when they're selecting an after-school program for their children?
I'm going to answer two ways, if I could, Mo. First of all, we should be concerned with kids after school, particularly in the first hour. Fight Crime, Invest in Kids is a national organization made up of state prosecutors, police chiefs, sheriffs. They say that the initial hour after school, that juvenile crime, violent juvenile crime triples, and that between the hours of 2 and 6, kids get into trouble more, they're more apt to test out drugs and alcohol, teen pregnancies occur, kids become victims of violent crime. So the hours between 2 and 6, those are the hours where parents are not as productive at work because they're on the phone trying to figure out where little Johnny or little Susie is. If I was looking for an after-school program, the first thing you want to look at certainly is the quality of the staff. Are the staff certified? Do they have credentials? What's the safety of the program? Are the children encouraged to participate in the planning of the events? You know, what are the activities? You want to try to match your child's interests with that of the program.
Now, our after-school program funding comes through the Early Learning Coalition, traditionally. They've just been hit with a $13 million cut, and essentially all funding for after-school for kids 6 and above has been cut. Is this happening across the state? What are you doing about that?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mo. First of all, what I like to tell folks is that the school readiness legislation was not passed on the backs of the 6 and 7-year-olds. And we've seen that happening throughout the state, not only in Miami, but certainly with the other counties where the priority 0 to 5, and what happens is they cut funding exponentially for kids aged 6 through 12. What the network is trying to do about that, you know, and I've been in this business for a long time, and what I'm going to tell you, I think the messenger has to change. And what I mean by that is when I would go before the state legislature, even when I was the assistant secretary or the state child care administrator, I was kind of suspect. But when David Lawrence talks about voluntary pre-K and school readiness, they listen. When Danny Marino talks about autism, they listen. So what we're doing at the network is we are putting together a cadre of professionals that are business folks. And they're the ones that are going to, we call our panel of champions, and they're the ones that are going to be helping us make the fight. On our panel, we have Frank Rogan, former Lieutenant Governor, State University Chancellor, Kathy Castor, Representative Castor, right here in Miami, Mayor Diaz, you know, Michael Lannis, School Superintendent. So we need to have these kinds of folks talking about the issue of after school in the state, and that's when we're going to get some movement.
You know, when you hear about all these reductions, I think we need to be thankful that we have the Children's Trust and organizations like that, because the Children's Trust is still supporting many programs. And in fact, the Children's Trust publishes an after-school program guide that any of you can pick up in Miami-Dade County at any Publix. It tells you what kind of information that you can, that parents can select, can have to select the right program for your child. And we've been talking a little bit about it, but certainly this program will go much more into detail. So I urge you to pick one of these up. Actually, very helpful information there. So we want to thank you both for joining us, and obviously for the work that you do for the children. We have to take a short break right now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how dads can and should play a greater role in their kids' lives, and especially now that school is about to start. Don't go away.
Welcome back. It's not uncommon for mothers to take a leading role in child rearing, including the supervision and homework and managing relationships with teachers, schools, and other programs. But dads need to be involved as well. Joining us now are members of the Fatherhood Taskforce. Holly Zwirling is the founder of the Fatherhood Taskforce, and Phil Tavernier is a task force member and a program manager for Youth Co-op. Welcome.
Thank you.
Holly, I'm going to start with you. This is such a great idea. I can't imagine why somebody didn't think of it first. But you started it here in Miami. Why?
Over 20 years ago, I was dealing with becoming a new mom myself, and I started an organization called Having Babies After 30 because I'm a marriage and family therapist and a clinical social worker and a community organizer. It was a natural thing to do, is to create a support group. And through my contact with parents, I began to realize that to really be there for children, you had to involve both the mother and the father. So we started groups for fathers and had father groups that met every week. And the dads, once they could get used to just being amongst themselves, realized that they had the skills to take care of their children.
But they were reluctant at the beginning.
They were reluctant at the beginning, and it took a lot to get them to at least explore the opportunity of being together with the children, and they did it. And they stayed together for several years after that. That was just the beginning of me recognizing that it was important for the community in general to understand the importance of fathers being involved from the get-go when they're expecting their children.
Phil, how do you recommend that fathers get involved with their children more intentionally?
Well, the key word is intentionally. I think the first thing that fathers have to do, and that's all the fathers that are watching now and father figures, is there first has to be a conscious intent to be more active in the lives of their children. And then once you do that, literally begin to schedule times to spend quality time with your children. Extended from that, be consistent with it, and then just continue to follow up. But first there has to be a conscious intent that I'm going to be a better father. I'm going to be a better male role model in the lives of my children and those that that I have the privilege of being in their lives.
That's tougher when there's separation or divorce involved. What do you recommend to those dads?
What's really important is that oftentimes we equate single motherhood and advocating father's involvement in the lives of those children with somehow the mother being inadequate. And I think that the first thing that we all have to stop doing is equating the advocacy of fathers in the lives of their children with some type of inadequacy with the mother. So there's not a woman who had a child by herself. So it's almost criminal to expect someone to try to raise the child by themselves. So once we begin to bring them together, we can begin to improve the community.
You know what, it seems to me that a lot of times it just takes a little push.
Yeah.
The father is willing, but just needs a little push, sometimes from the wife. But it can be a touchy subject. So as a mother, Holly, you as a counselor, what would you suggest women can do? I mean, how do you broach the subject with your husband? Honey, you know, you need to be a little bit more involved with the kids. I mean, how do you do it in a tactful way?
Sure. The Fatherhood Taskforce mission statement is to involve fathers more in the children's lives. And the key way to do that is to work with moms to realize how important it is for them to be successful as a parent, to be able to get their husbands and their fathers, the partners involved from day one. And if they can learn how to share that responsibility.
So how do you do it?
You do it by, for instance, saying to them, if a child is having a problem, go to them and say, what do you think is happening? You know, how do you think we should approach it? Empower them. Give them the opportunity to show that they have ideas and skills about what to do. Exactly. And in terms of the schools can do also a very good job in inviting the fathers to come in for parent-teachers weeks and continue to show the importance of fathers in children's lives.
So it has to be a partnership.
Absolutely. And it's going to be to the benefit of the children and everyone involved. Raising a child, as you know, takes a village. And I think if we could start off from the very beginning to give that message as doctors, hospitals, to really emphasize the Children's Trust has been pivotal in providing us with an opportunity to have 2 wonderful brochures, both in Spanish and English, for new fathers, to let them know how much we think they're important to their children from the very beginning of their lives.
Did you find that it got easier after a while?
What's that, being a father or?
Being involved.
Being involved, absolutely. Yeah. It also, the more you do it, it's kind of like working out. The more you do it, the better it feels. So you almost become duty bound as you, and men like to come together and discuss issues. We do it at the pool hall, we do it on the basketball court. So we all have ideas and conceptions of what it is to be a father. So when we come together, one of the things that the Fatherhood Taskforce does, for the most part, is we have fatherhood facilitation training programs. So from there, not only do you come and learn how to be a better father, etc., but you also learn how to go out and advocate to create support groups in order for you to have an environment that men can come together and talk about what it means to be a father, what it means to them, etc. So the more you do it, the better it feels. It's like wearing a new pair of shoes.
Oh, okay. So and the bottom line is you're a lot like mothers after all. Listen, thank you both for being with us this morning, and it's really been wonderful having you here, and you at home as well. So Moms, dads, grandparents too, remember to play an active role in child rearing. As Holly mentioned, it takes a village. And remember to rely on the childrenstrust.org or the 211 helpline to access programs and services for your family. Have a great start to the school year. I'm Ileana Borella. On behalf of the Children's Trust and Modesto Betty, thanks for watching this edition of Our Children. Enjoy the rest of your day. Our Children is brought to you by the Children's Trust. The Children's Trust invests in programs and services that help make children healthy, safe, loved, ready to learn, succeed in school and in life. To access its funded programs and services in Miami-Dade County, visit thechildrenstrust.org or call the Children's Trust helpline at 211, because all children are our children. This program is brought to you in part by the Greater Miami Youth Symposium.